What's up? What's up? Just like that, it is Monday again. Glad y'all are tuning in. We're gonna try to keep this down to about a half hour, like we did last week. Have some other things that still need to be done tonight, so gonna try to make this more of a abbreviated version. We'll start off with baseball, touch on a little softball, and get into the spring game. Baseball finally got the first ACC series win of the year. Florida State. Kind of we're just past the halfway point, and it's if you look at this team's ACC record, you think the season's probably over, but it's really not. If they can get things turned around and turn them around now, they still got a shot to get into a regional. They are ranked just outside of the top 40 in the RPI because they played one of the stronger schedules in the country. But the thing is, that schedule does not let up. You know, they go to Athens to play Georgia tomorrow night, and I know Georgia's only 3-9 in SEC play, but they're 37 at number 37 in the RPI. Then they play Notre Dame at home, who is 7-8 in ACC play. They are 38th in the RPI. Then the next weekend, North Carolina State on the road, who is only 5-9 in league play, but a top 10 RPI team. So the schedule's not going to let up anytime in the near future. They actually have a home and home with Georgia. They play at Georgia this week, and then they'll go to Georgia. I mean, they'll play Georgia at home the following week. You know, two midweek games, a home and home series during the midweek, like they usually do every year. Rocco Reed gets to start for Clemson on the road tomorrow. Rocco Reed is a pitcher with excellent stuff, man. If he can ever get his command down, I think he's going to be a really good pitcher, but it's been command issues that have plagued him. He's averaging somewhere around a walk and a half per inning this season. Absolutely not what you want to see. If you get 3 innings out of him tomorrow, I think you're good. We'll see how it plays out. It's on the road. I'd have to go back and check, but I want to think this is his first career start. So not easy sledding for him if that is indeed his first career start there in Athens. Softball gets swept at home by Florida State. Not what anybody was expecting in that matchup. You know, if somebody would have told you Clemson was only going to win 1 out of the 3, you know, that probably would have shocked you like Clemson getting swept did. Nobody thought they'd get swept. Kind of a little bit of a wake-up call for that team. You know, maybe as good as they are, maybe they're just not quite there yet. Hey, maybe they're just not quite there yet. The toughest teams they played this year, they've lost to really Tennessee, the 3 against Florida State. I cover the baseball team, so I kind of stick to watching baseball, so I don't get to watch a lot of softball. But from what I'm told, there was a lot of self-inflicted errors or self-inflicted miscues that cost the softball team in that series this weekend. They'll grow, they'll learn from it, and they'll be better because of it. Would not be surprised at all to see those two teams square off again in the postseason. So don't get too down on them. They dropped down to number 13 in the RPI. I don't think the new polls have come out yet, though. I think that's tomorrow. Yes, coaches were announced several days ago for the spring game. CJ Spiller, Nick Eason, and they have been talking it up on Twitter. If you're on Twitter, they have been trash talking one another. If you listen to Dabo Swinney after the scrimmage last Wednesday, he was kind of imploring the fans to show up. I think Clemson they're going to have some recruits in attendance. I think they want to at least try and put a little bit of a show on, you know, or at least show off some of this new offense. I'm not saying expect them to go out there and light up the scoreboard or anything. You know, keep in mind they're down a bunch of offensive linemen, you know, a bunch of receivers. So, I mean, temper expectations. But, you know, last year in the spring game, we saw a bunch of punts. I wrote it down here somewhere. I can't remember how many off the top of my head. 16 punts in that spring game last year. So the way the offense has fallen off the past couple of years, that's absolutely something that's being used against Clemson on the recruiting trail. So I think they are going to want to show some of these wide receivers they are targeting, any future quarterback targets in the 2024 class, that, hey, we are getting this thing turned around and we're going to get it turned around this year. Actually, that's one of the first things I've got wrote down here, when you're looking ahead to the spring game. How much of a show do they put on? How much of a show do they try to put on? And how much of a show can they put on with the limited bodies? No Bo Collins, no Adam Randall. Really, you're kind of looking at Brandon Spector, Antonio Williams, Cole Turner, who is a redshirt freshman, and Noble Johnson, who is a true freshman. And you're going to have to divide those guys up between the two teams. So add in a divided up offensive line that's missing two starters. And I'm not sure how much of a show they will be able to put on, but I think they're going to try at least air the ball out some. We'll see how it plays out. Just temper expectations. Don't expect 60-something points from the two teams combined. Me, personally, what I'm looking for, I want to see that Cade Klubnik's got a good grasp of the offense. I want to see how far Chris Vizina's, come along since he started the spring. Those are two of the big things I'll be looking for on the offense. I mentioned Noble Johnson a minute ago. He's going to have plenty of opportunities. So he's a guy that I would definitely be keeping an eye on. But one thing I would not put too much stock in is, if the offensive line gets beat like a drum, remember, they are split in half and missing two starters on top of that. So never put too much stock into a spring game. No, the rosters have not been announced yet. They were not announced until 2 days before the game last year, if my memory serves me correctly. I want to say they came out on the Thursday before the game. I would expect a similar timeline this year. There's some other things I'll be looking for is those young defensive linemen, man. Peter Woods, T.J. Parker in particular. We know what Peter Woods is. We've heard about him all spring. Seems like almost every coach has talked about him. A bunch of the players have talked about him. He seems to be the real deal. I thought he was the real deal before he got to campus. When you show up to an all-star game, man, and they got to take you off the field just to get some practice reps in, that speaks volumes to me. I think that kid's going to make an impact this year. So to me, the guy I'm really going to be looking to see how he plays is T.J. Parker, freshman defensive end. I'm the only early enrollee at defensive end, and we know that's where Clemson's a little bit thin. You got Xavier Thomas, Justin Mascoll. It sounds like Cade Denoff's taking a big jump. Doesn't sound like Zaire Patterson is taking that jump. So there are going to be opportunities for Parker, and there are going to be opportunities for him to play early. And we heard Lemansky Hall rave about him the other day. Called him a plug-and-play type guy. So we finally get to lay eyes on him for real Saturday. But we'll see how far along he is. Also, guys like Vic Burley, Stephon Green. I'm curious to see Shelton Lewis, freshman cornerback. How does Wade Woodaz look, after he's got a year of experience under his belt? And that pass defense in general might depend on how much actually Clemson tries to open it up, because they're not – let's be real, it's a spring game. You're not going to see them run out a bunch of plays or anything. They're not going to tip their hand and show a bunch of stuff, but it'll be interesting to see exactly how much throwing down the field they do. And if they do some throwing down the field, how does that secondary respond? Because that was one of the biggest weaknesses on the team last year. It has been mentioned by Dabo Swinney multiple times as an area that needs major improvement heading into this year. So that's another thing to be looking for. Going to be some recruits on hand this weekend. 2 of them on the offensive side of the ball, 2025 guys that I have circled. Gideon Davison, probably the top running back in the next recruiting cycle. He just visited last weekend. He's going to be back for the spring game. And here's a name to know is Cutter Boley. Used to be a 2024 guy, reclassified. He's from Kentucky. He took advantage of a new law there and was able to reclassify to 2025. Clemson's still looking for a guy in the 2024 class after they just missed on Aaron Nolan. If you can get him to reclassify back to 2024, and from my understanding, it is something he would consider still doing. He might end up, he might possibly or potentially be your next quarterback target. Because after you miss on Nolan, obviously, the next question is who's the next target? Who do they go after next? And I'm not sure the coaching staff even knows that answer yet. We might not know that for a few weeks here. Still a couple more dominoes to fall. Got Dabo Swinney's high school camp coming up here in May. You never know who might roll through there and really tear it up. Might somebody come through there and earn an offer the hard way. Those are coming up in, just a few weeks from now. So, yeah, Vic Burley's definitely one. Definitely one I would be looking for. No doubt about it. Some other recruits that are going to be on hand, these are defensive guys, and these are all 2024 guys, cornerback Corian Gibson. I think Clemson's in a real good spot with him. We'll see if they can seal the deal this weekend. I think they have a chance to finish the thing off this weekend with him. Not saying that's going to happen. I just think they have a shot at doing it. It is also possible he can let things play out through June and take a couple of officials. But either way, I think Clemson's at the top of his list right now. And I do think there is at least a possibility that they can, close the deal on him this year or this weekend. Defensive end C.J. Jackson, one of the top targets at that position. I think that, he's supposed to be here in June. So we'll see. He announced publicly that he was planning to take an official visit in Clemson, or official visit to Clemson in June. He just listed some schools he was planning to take officials to. Never listed a date or anything. Clemson only hosts that first weekend. So we'll see how that plays out. I do fully expect him to be there that weekend. And he's another guy I think Clemson's in solid shape for. Not saying they're the favorite, not saying they're going to land him. I just think they have positioned themselves about as well as they could have for where we are right now. And Drew Woodaz will be back this weekend. Another guy I think Clemson's in fantastic shape with. $20-25 offers don't start going out till June. We'll see if Dabo does what he did with Sammy Brown this year and offer somebody a little bit earlier. I could see them doing that with Davis Sanders, who visited last weekend, the top player in the country in the next cycle, an offensive lineman from right there in North Carolina. He is going to be priority numero uno in the next recruiting cycle. Make no mistake. So, I could see a scenario playing out in which they offer him a little bit earlier than all of the other kids. But if it doesn't play out that way, it also wouldn't shock me either. I'm just saying I could see it happen. Yeah, again, I think there is a potential for Clemson to close this thing up with Corian Gibson this weekend. We'll see if they can do it, or if he decides to let it play out a little bit longer and take some officials. As most of you have probably seen, Heaven Brown Schuler, he's finally announced a commitment date, April 22nd. He is not going to be in town for the spring game like some people had speculated a few weeks ago. He's got something going on that won't allow him to be here this weekend. So he's going to announce next weekend. He tweeted out a while back, I don't know, 3 weeks ago, maybe, that he was shutting his recruitment down. His recruitment was over. He knew where he was going. And we've kind of just been waiting on him to announce a date ever since. He's a guy that if you kind of follow the visits, if you look all the crystal balls favor Clemson, myself, there is a pair of shades that's been out there for about 3 weeks now. So I think that the new shades are fixing to go 2 for 2. We'll know in a little bit more. We'll know in a couple of weeks here. Oh, yeah, that's a good one. I didn't even think of him. TJ Dudley is another guy worth, I think he's a guy that could play a lot this year. He's not going to start, obviously, but I think he's a guy that could see a lot of snaps in a reserve role. So, yeah, I am. He will be another guy worth keeping an eye on Saturday. Absolutely. Don't know how I missed him when I was writing some names down. All right, I told y'all what I'm looking for. What are y'all looking for? What do y'all want to see in the spring game? For me, I think the biggest thing, I want to see where, how can I say this? We also, I think Antonio Williams just started scratching the surface with what he could do last year. I think he is primed to take a big jump this year in this new offense. He's got a year under his belt now. Sounds like he's already kind of evolving into one of the leaders in that wide receiver room. I already mentioned Noble Johnson. He is a guy that if you follow me or read my stuff or watch any of these things, I have been talking up Noble Johnson since I watched him work out at Dabo's camp last summer. He is impressive, man. He is a physical specimen. He is a wide receiver that is built. I've said it many times, built like a tank. We'll see how far along he is. And Cole Turner, we have all heard the coaches rave about him this spring. Now we get to see if it's, that if it's kind of spring sunshine pumping or if it's legit, because anybody that's followed Clemson long enough knows we have spring stars and then legit superstars. We hear every spring there's a guy or two we hear about that's just killing it, and then we don't hear about him all season long. Although don't get me wrong, I think Cole Turner is going to be a pretty vital piece of the offense in a reserve role. I'm not saying he's going to start or anything, but I think he's going to play a pivotal role coming off the bench. Yeah, I touched on this at the top. I'm kind of curious to see exactly. I think Clemson wants to at least try to put on a little bit of a show. They know the downward turn of the offense over the past 2 seasons has not only been used against them on the recruiting trail, but it's kind of taking a little bit of the buzz out of the fan base too. They're kind of in this "I'll believe it when I see it" mode. So, not all, just some. And they. So I think they want to kind of put in the spring on a positive note with some good energy, some good talking points heading into the summer. Something they could use on the recruiting trail when they go back out and start visiting here in a couple of weeks, and when they bring kids in for official visits in June, they want to have actual film they can show of this offense. And don't get me wrong, again, like I said earlier, I'm not expecting a 35-31 game or anything like that. I don't think Clemson's going to come in there and start trying to air it down the field every other play. I do think they will make some effort to push that ball down the field a little bit, just to put on a little bit of a show, so to speak. I think it'll probably be a very, with all the injuries Clemson has, it wouldn't surprise me if it wasn't a very run-heavy game. Again, we know it's going to be very vanilla. Don't expect a bunch of razzle-dazzle. With all these different plays and formations and everything, they don't want to tip their hand. Hunter Renfrow. I see Cole having a Renfrow size impact this season. Man, that's a bold take there. We'll see. We'll see. Yeah, I know I really hadn't talked about them missing on Air Nolan. I said for a while that I just did not get a good vibe off of Nolan, and him ended up at Clemson. I think he is a legitimate quarterback and has the potential to be a big-time player at the Power 5 level. His film just pops, man. He's got superstar written all over him. And I think there are a number of factors that played into why Clemson did not land him. One of those being the fact that they've got two underclassmen guys who are former 5-star recruits. And again, I know Vizina wasn't a 5-star in the final rankings, but he spent most of the class or most of the cycle as a 5-star. He was a 5-star at one point. So you got two former 5-stars who are both underclassmen. Klubnik could very well be here 3 more years, and Vizina could easily be here 4. So, I think Nolan is talented enough to have come in here and potentially beat out Vizina. But why take that chance when you could go somewhere else and there's an easier path? You don't have to get through so many underclassmen to get to the field. Look at the wide receiver talent Ohio State has in this class. Clemson's not wide receiver U anymore, man. You can make the argument that Ohio State is right now because they are bringing in 5-star talent left and right up there in Columbus at receiver. He's got legit targets to throw to. Clemson has yet to land a 2024 wide receiver. On paper, the 2023 class, if you look at it on paper and just go by recruiting rankings, it's not going to blow you away. Outside of Ronan Hannafin, there's no top 100 talent on the list. I do think, whether they found a couple of diamonds in the rough, we'll see. I think they did, but if you just go by rankings, it's just the one guy, and they don't have one in 2024 yet. He knows if he goes there, he already knows who he's going to be throwing to. And, I said it from the get-go that I thought Miami had the edge going into the spring. And for a while, I had heard nothing substantial enough to make me change my mind about that. But I also said we had to get through that Ohio State visit, see where we were after that. Sure enough, he goes to Ohio State, and that was it. That was the end of that. He was done. Miami took a commitment from a 2024 quarterback before he even announced. So they knew he wasn't coming after he got up there to Columbus too. As for where Clemson turns to next, I don't think they know yet. So I can't give you a name. I'll tell you one name. There's a kid coming this weekend. His name's Cutter Boley. He is a 2025 guy, but he was originally a 2024 quarterback. He reclassified to 2025. And I have been told that he might consider going back to 2024 as an early enrollee if the right opportunity came along. Whether Clemson's that right opportunity, I don't know. He will be in attendance for the spring game. So, if he ends up being the next target, we'll probably know pretty quick. If not, if he's not the next target in 2024, I could see it being a few weeks before we know who the next guy that gets an offer is. I could see him going through Dabo Swinney's high school camps and seeing who rolls through there and what kind of workouts they have and going from there. Again, I don't think quarterback's a dire need in this class, but I definitely don't think – I'm not like a lot of fans who think you can kick the can down the road and just wait till 2025. You still need a quarterback in this class. He just doesn't have to be a top 5, top 10 guy. You need a guy with some potential, a guy you can develop. Let's just say go find you a 3-star guy and develop him. You don't take one this class, that means you got to take another. You need to take another one in the portal or take 2 next cycle, and you don't ever want to have to taking 2 in the same cycle is not ideal, especially not in the NIL era. Yeah, Michael, I definitely see more 2-set running backs coming, no doubt. Two backs on the field at the same time. 2 in the backfield at the same time. Shipley lined up out wide or in the slot or whatever, and Maffa lined up in the backfield. Maffa's going to get more carries this year. You can bank on that. That's the guy they almost lost in the offseason to transfer. And they told him he was going to be more involved, and you can bet your bottom dollar he will be. If you mean just a guy as talented as Woods, I'd say offensive lineman Davis Sanders. He's the top player in the class. You can't get no higher rated than that. So, all right, 30 minutes. I like it. Appreciate all y'all tuning in. I got to jump off here real quick. I'm scared. I got to get my dog outside, or she's probably going to end up going on the floor. Just kidding. She knows better than that. But appreciate y'all tuning in. See y'all next Monday. AllClemsonTigers.com will have the spring game covered for you from every direction, man. Check it out.